Welcome to The Claw. I'm Eric Holtzclaw, Chief Strategist at Liger. The Claw is the marketing podcast for C-suite executives. I am joined today by Patrick Quattlebaum. He is with Harmonic Design. Thank you so much for joining me, Patrick.
Good to be here.
Yeah. So tell me a little bit about Harmonic. What do you all do?
Well, Harmonic is a service design consultancy. We just turned 5 years old, and we're based in Atlanta, Georgia. But our team members are all across the country, including a couple other countries. And we work with organizations. A lot of it is early strategy, innovation around how to create new or improve existing services in their organizations. But also part of our mission is to help organizations build service design capabilities within their organizations. So we do that in either teams that are just starting or brand new teams, help bring those competencies and the value that service design brings into companies.
Okay. And so for those who may not know what service design is, how do you define?
Yeah. Well, if you get a bunch of service designers together, you might get a bunch of different answers. But yeah, service design. So, if you take those two words, the second one, design. So if you think of what you see in human-centered design, more strategic design in organizations that try to bring the needs of people into decision-making, that experiences are very material to how value is created. So similarities with product design and elements of design thinking, things like that. Where the service part comes in is that most organizations, whether they realize it or not, are service organizations. Their products are actually services. And there's a logic within service design that you're looking to create very healthy value exchanges between different entities, companies to company, person to person. So it works at a level higher than, say, user experience or product design, where you're looking across products, across channels, across time, ecosystems, looking at how you design a very healthy service ecosystem from the services you provide and the impact they make in the world down to the touch points that deliver those services. And it also looks at what happens for customers, similar to customer experience, but also employees. And it treats that as a problem, not two separate problems, because they're part of the same value system.
Yeah, it's always an interesting thing is that companies will look at one side, not the other, realizing if you don't do this on this other side, we're never going to fix this. So what is speaking of, like, when a company decides to bring you in, is it typically for something new? Are they running into a problem? Like, what makes them pick up the phone and say, hey?
Yeah, it's interesting. It has a lot of application wherever you are in the life cycle, from what opportunities do we have to create new value to, is the service that we provide today working, and how do we improve it? And what we found over the last 5 years is the parts of the organization that bring us in. It could be operations, it could be strategy, it could be innovation, it could be customer experience. And it's often someone who sees that a lot of the work that happens in organizations are, you're working on the nodes of a system. So you might be doing the digital thing, but there's a physical part to the experience for, say, a customer. Or you may be working on the marketing part of something, but then that actually has to be delivered and create the value through the service. And they know that all that work's been chopped up and spread out a bunch of different teams. And so sometimes we've lost the forest.
Yeah.
And do all these trees make sense? And can you help us rethink and reimagine how the service should really work? And often there's a desire to ensure that the value to customers and employees is really being, manifested. A lot of our innovation work is we're helping look at opportunities in the world around us, doing exploratory research, and then, guiding through potential concepts, and then taking things into market to test it.
Yeah.
That are new services, say, stretching the boundaries of what the organization does.
Yeah, maybe the thing they haven't thought of.
Yeah, exactly. But like I said earlier, in both of those cases, the way we work with organizations is we build blended teams with them with the goal of bringing these approaches into their company. We believe they're really important, right? We're a small firm. We don't have the desire to be huge firm, but we want more of this to happen. And so we're hoping we're a catalyst within organizations so that they adopt it.
Yeah, because you can do the best sort of research or define something, and then if they don't know how to then carry that forward in a meaningful way, it's just a great project they talked about or research.
Correct. Yeah. And that's kind of, in building the firm, I've done a lot of that consulting in the past and have seen, and always was nervous about, I remember walking into an organization one time and there was these faded things on the wall, like literally faded from the sunlight. And I'm like, well, what's that? I'm like, oh, some consultant did that. Yeah. And that's the biggest fear, whether you're inside or outside, right? That wherever you picked up the baton and tried to push something forward, that did it make a difference, So, yeah. So a lot of the way we work with clients are often very extended across years. Not that a project takes years, but the partnership is often about, a lot of the stuff we work on is fairly complicated and complex, and it takes a while to get the organization to, bring that in and keep it healthy, and for the service to sink roots, into, especially if it's new. I'm sure you've seen that in a lot of your work, of that chasm between innovation and sustainable
100%
value creation. So, that chasm we're really interested in, of how companies don't fall into that.
Yeah, and you've got, like, in bigger companies, the leadership changes out and other people take the roles, and there's got to be a way to transfer that. So, and that's intentional. Like in a big company, your intent is to get a promotion and get to the next position, but the next person who's taking that role needs to have the same information that you do. Right?
No, exactly. We see that in terms of teams. We're trying to find, product market fit, and it takes a while. Yeah. And then the team changes.
Right.
And then new people show up and go, wait a minute, have we tried? Yes. Have we done? Yes. And the fresh eyes are great, but also picking up on the scent, of trying to find that fit is really important. So, I think that's something that, organizations, I think, find, they love the stories of two people in a garage and like a breakthrough product that finds fit pretty quickly. But if you look at the actual data, that's not, even in the startup world, that's not the norm, right? It takes time, and that continuity is important. And even if the people change, how do you stay focused and keep your learning cycles where you're building off of what you learned before?
Interesting. So let's take a step back. So you talked a little bit about kind of where you are and what you did. You're like 5 years old, and you said, I think when I grow up, I want to be a service design person.
And it didn't exist. I mean that, like, service design in the U.S. is fairly new. Yeah. And I was very early in the cohort starting to do it, but here, not in Europe. It has its roots there. I have, my undergrad was in English literature.
Okay.
So I thought I was going to be a professor.
Yeah.
But from that, I got a lot of awesome storytelling skills and analysis and synthesis across texts, which I use all the time. While I was in undergrad, I started a company with my dad. We owned a sporting goods store, a soccer store.
Okay.
So I ran a service business.
Yeah.
Built it from the ground up, 7 years, doing all the jobs, working with customers, doing the ordering, all the things you do in running a business. So I got a really good business background there, real business, not studying it, and what it's like for a service company to, like, how you run it, and how you have things that you were thinking about long term, but then the door swings open and someone comes in. So, like, how do you balance, current and future state and all those good things. But when I was running the store, that was in the 90s, and the web started to come around, and we hired somebody to do our first website. And he was doing it, and it was obvious that he had a prep background. And I'm watching how he was designing it, and I'm like, this doesn't seem like the way you would do this.
Right.
So I just got curious.
Yeah.
Which, my father eventually wasn't happy about, because of that. Curiosity turned into, I think I want to, like, design things, and I don't want to run a soccer store. So that's a whole nother podcast.
That's a whole nother, yeah, right.
So I went to, I actually was thinking between urban design and information design and technology at Georgia Tech. And it's interesting because urban design is very similar to service design. It's just a different domain, which is you're kind of up higher and you're looking at, like, say, what an organization offers as a bunch of services, it's like, well, that's kind of like the urban, an urban area, like the, Atlanta, where we are right now. You're not working on the house.
Right.
You're working on the city.
Yeah.
And that's what a service designer basically does. So I think I was my brain starting to track to like that type of problem solving and that scale. But I chose information design and technology in part because it was in the communication and culture school, which was very comforting to me as an English major. But it was a great choice because that program, very strong. And so from that, I went into user experience for 5 or 6 years, ended up building a team. But by 15 years ago, I had too many projects where I was thinking at the scale that I now know as service design. But clients would say that, I know you're talking about these other channels, and I know you're talking about what happens before this thing, but can you do the digital thing?
And focus on this.
Yeah. And I was like, that's not how I was pretty good at it, but I was like, this is not really, I'm not passionate. I'm like, I think I want to go, and I was starting to do more strategic work. And then that just unlocked this part of my career. So worked at a consultancy in Atlanta. I went and worked for Adaptive Path in San Francisco as managing director. They're a pioneering, UX firm. They were starting to shift to service design, and there were some people there that I really wanted to learn and work with. And then we were acquired by Capital One.
Yep. Okay.
And we became the service design team for Capital One. So I was head of service design. And a lot of what I did was working with our international teams and bringing design into their part of the company, as our other directors started to become heads of design in other parts of the company. I was living in San Francisco. I was doing consulting, but inside of one company. I'm like, I miss the variety. Yeah. And then that's how I ended up back in Atlanta. And then I just connected with some people I used to work with. And I always felt when Adaptive Path was acquired that the market around service design was starting to mature. We were early in it. And I'm like, I don't know. I think I can create something to be able to do that. And so I co-founded it with James Morelli, and then the rest is history. Yeah.
Cool. Well, we're going to go to commercial break. And when we get back, I want to get a little bit more into sort of service design and application, because there'll be some companies that are listening to this that they don't know what you're talking about, right? Like,
oh yeah,
no clue. So like, how do they start to think about like, where would this fit? As they think about budgets and who owns it, and is it a center of excellence, or does it, like all those kind of conversations. So
cool.
You're listening to The Claw. I'm Eric Holtzcott, Chief Strategist at Liger. Joined today by Patrick Quattlebaum. He is with Harmonic Design and has a background in service design, which is an interesting, it's such a good match to marketing. I always argue that marketing is so much more far reaching than just that one little ad saw at the beginning. So we'll be back in just a second.
The Claw podcast is brought to you by Liger Partners. Liger Partners is a premier marketing firm where we save the world from boring, broken marketing. We get underdogs recognition because you deserve it. For more information, go to ligerpartners.com and follow us on all social media platforms at Liger Partners.
And we're back. You're listening to The Claw. I'm Eric Holtzcott, Chief Strategist at Liger. The Claw is the marketing podcast for C-suite executives, and we're talking about something that I call marketing adjacent. So marketing should be like a component, a part. I'm actually interested to see how you think about that, like where that kind of fits in the world. So Patrick Quattlebaum, he is with Harmonic Design, and we're in the space of service design. So a more holistic look at kind of how something you're building for your company, or the way that you're it shows up in the world. So not just the screens or some component, it's like more. And it's such an important thing to look at, because companies often will only focus on that one part, and then it starts to fail and they don't know why. And it's because they haven't considered all the things that have to go around it.
That's right. And I think we all experience this as consumers and customers.
Yes.
We can feel it and see it when it happens. And so when you call that contact center and the left hand doesn't know what the right hand's doing, and you are on the website and they don't know what you've done and what that means, that's service design breaking down. That's a lack of service design.
Yeah, and we talk about keeping the brand promise. So we've spent all this time convincing somebody of something, educating them along the way, and then all of a sudden they start to experience the brand. It's like, and it's not a...
Yeah, exactly. I mean, you mentioned marketing adjacent. So, I'd mentioned earlier the concept of value exchanges. That actually comes from the marketing world. So that's a service oriented, dominant logic, right? That it's not that you embed all the value and roll it off an assembly line and then put it on a shelf and market it, right? That the value is created in interaction.
Yeah.
And so if anyone listening or watching is jobs to be done, there's similar concepts in that, as well. It's not just the functional, it's the emotional, it's the social. It's very dynamic in how that value is created. A lot of companies over the last 20 years have started to do more design and more focus on experience and having chief experience officers and teams. And a lot of that work is happening on pieces.
Yeah.
And it is that work, the way architects work at the connection. So like I work with a lot of enterprise and solution architects. So they're looking at it from a technology standpoint of how all these different capabilities and reusable things can be done. And what they often find is teams are creating things in parallel redundantly.
Yes,
100%. And it's a lot of waste.
Yeah.
So that's where we work with them a lot, because it's similar on, say, if you're looking at the experience for an employee or a customer, they're the victims of all that, right? Like this thing is not connecting to that thing. And a little bit of that forest level planning goes a long way and actually saves time and reduce risk. But a lot of approaches and organizations skip right to the team level and say, make your piece.
Yeah.
So I often compare it in working with organizations that a lot of the work is like, imagine you have a puzzle box and you have all these pieces in it that people have made, and the top of the box is blank. How do you know what you were trying to make together? And so that's it's a little bit...
Everybody's off making their pieces.
Yeah, exactly. And then the brand being part of that DNA. We've done work with organizations to, connect service design with brand strategy and, the brand principles.
Right.
So that, and then how do you flow that into teams using that so that when they are working in parallel, empowered, often agile teams, or is it going to come together?
Yeah.
Right. And so a little bit of that is, well, where are we going in the first place? And then some of it is then giving them concepts and tools and embedding it in how they work.
Yeah.
And so that's why a lot of what we do is about how companies work, because that's how you get the most out of it. You can't say, here's where we're heading and pretend like the world's not going to change, but you also can't just get a bunch of people working and pretend like everyone knows where we're going. And so it's a constant balancing act.
Yeah, we've got 3 clients that we literally just do strategy work to align their marketing departments, because they've siloed their departments. And so each one of them might be building a thing and the other one doesn't know that they're building it. So to get them to reuse, right? And or so they don't build the same thing. Like it's because they're just not, there's no common place for them to have that conversation and to, well, did you realize such and such over here has already built an asset that's just like that,
Exactly.
So, and then of course, imagine like we're trying to do that internally such that the customer doesn't be like, so there's 2 videos about this exact same topic.
No, exactly. It can save, there's this tendency to go, let's just get moving, let's go faster. We don't have time to do that. But then when you look in the rearview mirror, you see all of that redundancy, the waste, the things that are broken. It's a common philosophical argument of like, measure twice, cut once, or just cut.
And Blake.
Yeah, exactly. And I think there's a third way that it really has to emerge from all of this. It's not the old waterfall world, but when I talk to leaders inside different organizations, especially large ones that have tried to adopt a lot of agile approaches, they see a lot of issues. And many have moved on to their 2 or 3.0 of those approaches, and those are ones we're looking to, like, these add a lot of value in complementing those things, not replacing them. So that's, I think that balancing act of, how do you continue to move quickly, try things, don't overthink things, but also don't treat a complex problem like it's simple. In order to design something simple, you have to really understand the problem and meet it where it's at.
Yeah, it's like what Mark Twain said, it's really hard to write a simple sentence.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So it took a lot of time.
Yeah, the goal should be understandable, easy to use, consistent, continuous experiences. It should seem simple in retrospect.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Well, that was always, in the research space, you're always told, well, you just told me common sense. I'm like, well, if it was common, you would have been doing it, right?
But what we were saying earlier about the aligning the marketing teams, I think that might be the other connection for listeners would be, if you have any experience or have worked with journeys, like that's a big concept in service design as well. It's often a connection point with CX teams where you're using the concept of a person's end-to-end experience as your alignment point.
Yeah.
So it's hey, in this moment of the experience, someone may run into trouble and they need to get help. What are their options? And if they pick, say you offer them 3, strategic choice, chat, call, walk into an office, now what happens, and how can that be, from a brand world, a consistent brand experience? You're going to have to do some different things in each of those channels because they each have their different things they can and can't do. You can do it digital
and different
or not.
It might be,
but the outcome that you're striving for is the same.
Yeah.
And so it's building that logic into organizations that, did you all know that you're all really working on the same problem and trying to get the same outcome, but you think of it as a digital thing, and you think of it as a call center thing, and you think of it as a retail store thing, and that customer may flow from each of your channels in their end-to-end experience. Can we all see where all of our work is contributing to creating the variety of experiences that people should have, and then how can we help one another and not do redundant work in the organization? That starts, we really believe those frameworks aren't just about good design and good outcomes, but they're about a better day at work for employees.
Yeah. And
I mean, the ones making those things, because often the swirl and confusion in companies are those types of things. We don't know what the left and right hand's doing when we're at work.
Right. We don't. And then there's also, breaking down all the politics of, who those guys. So we spend so much time when we go in. We do a lot of M&A where we're bringing companies together and they're trying to build one brand over multiple, and they want to present themselves in the way that the brands were before. And it's like, well, no, let's think about people who are coming to, what are they looking for? We don't want to present all the different departments and the things you do that way. Then don't look for it that way, right?
Yeah.
So a starter project, right? So you got somebody out here thinking like, okay, yeah, I kind of hear us in that. That's we got some of that going on. We need to think more holistically. Is there something that's like typically good to look at within a company to kind of try it or to understand how it could be applied?
Yeah, I mean,
because it feels like it would take some you'd have to do a little preaching, right?
A little bit, yeah. I mean, it's definitely new, and definitely we're on that change curve with a lot of companies. When as an example, when I was at AdaptivePath and we were acquired, there's a little bit of service design happening in the company, but not a lot. Now you have like 20-something service designers show up who have been doing it and as a team for some of the, biggest companies in the U.S. And so, but the guidance we got, which I think was really smart, we did some things that were kind of customer facing, but, we started looking at the onboarding experience of employees. That's a good example of where the people around you that are trying to understand what are you doing is like, well, you onboarded, you had that experience, or you're hiring somebody or someone on your team is joining and they're going through it, and it immediately adds value to the company. It's always a pain point inside of even small organizations, but like 45,000 people at Capital One, it was a really good thing to look at.
Yeah, no, that's really smart because everybody does experience it. It is something that needs to typically be.
Yeah, it's good guidance from the executives that brought us in. And I think that onboarding in general is interesting from a customer one as well. We do a number of those. It's often, from the marketing world, it's like those projects are first touch, triggers that they might need your product or service, what we recommend is through like 90, 100 days of being a customer as one of the pathways.
Because that's the most dangerous. That's when they can decide to back out.
Yeah, exactly. So like, who do you want that customer to become by 90 or 100 days? Now let's think about where they start. What are the patterns you're seeing of where they could start from?
Yeah.
And then, okay, now we're just storytelling. How does someone go from end to end? And some of those projects are often about, either that they're trying to go to more digital self-service, but like you probably hear this a lot in your clients, like, how do we not lose the human touch as we go more digital? Or there's always new things you can do at different moments of that type of experience. So how do we do things we do today, and these new things are like, what do we do with AI? And do we stop doing this? So like, what's their channel mix? What do they offer to different customers at different times? And those things then tend to show kind of immediate value, because customer creation and balancing of effective and efficient, right? Like that hitting that, and the business, showing the business value of it is like super critical.
Yeah, discovering moments that matter.
Exactly.
These distinct moments that are going to either push somebody over or take them out, like that.
No, yeah, exactly. Like the approaches that we use. So, moments that matter and critical moments, and Brandon, about 10 years ago is thinking like, okay, so a lot of in marketing and customer experience and design, we talk about the moments that matter. It's like, well, if there's moments that matter, what about the other moments?
Right. Exactly.
And so a lot of the modeling that we do with companies are like, what are your moments?
Yeah.
And sometimes the moments that matter, if you look at it from a brand standpoint, you may think one thing, but then what about the different people you're trying to serve? They are not uniform.
Right.
And so what you end up with is usually a Venn diagram. These matter most to most people, and where we differentiate and where we should really invest and shine. But let's not forget that for this type of customer, these matter, and for this one, these matter. And then these other ones, do we really need to reinvent login every time we do something? The moment of like authenticating.
Yeah.
There's a lot of times that peanut butter gets spread really thinly. So we found that really helps. And it's also a good uniter, because what I found is inside of marketing, inside of customer experience, inside of a lot of people talk about moments, and they're always really crisp about exactly what they mean, but it's kind of intuitive.
Right.
So we've built approaches that turn it from intuition into actual architectural pieces that you're building experiences around, and you can measure, and then that allows you to innovate. So the moment matters, your solutions change.
Yeah.
Don't fall in love with your touch points. Fall in love with the moment you're trying to create and what options you have, and that's going to change over time. And then when you have something like AI come up, now you have a framework to evaluate where it can add value versus what do we do with AI, which is the hammer that a lot of people are running around with right now, but they don't have decision criteria that aligns with brand, with customer need, and that's what a lot of these approaches are trying to do.
Very nice. So how do people find you? How do they get in touch with you?
I used to say on Twitter or X, but like, I don't know. Where do people hang out these days?
LinkedIn. Because I used to say the same thing. I used to be, Twitter was my thing, and now I'm LinkedIn.
Yeah, I feel tribeless right now. LinkedIn, Patrick Quattlebaum, and our website, so this is harmonic.com.
Nice. I like that. This is Harmonic. That's a nice, I like that. It's going to turn it into a little sentence. Very service design of you. Very nice. Well, thank you so much for joining us today.
Yeah, it's great. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. So you've been listening to The Claw. I'm Eric Holtzclaw, Chief Strategist at Liger. The Claw is the marketing podcast for C-suite executives. We've been talking today about service design, which sounds like maybe it's not marketing, but it really is. We talk about all the same things, like how do I make sure that promise from cradle to grave for a customer is what they expected, and you spend all this time and all the touch points you need to get them to convert, and then you drop the ball on those first pieces. So thinking about that more holistically, and it brings your company together better. Like they all are same mission, and really good practical advice on thinking about the onboarding process. That's something that everybody, regardless, has to go through. How can we improve that? So until next time, thanks for tuning in.